And now I'm going to be recording, and these are my controls down here, pause, stop. So I can pause. All right, so we're recording again. So today we're going to continue on with our jQuery and learning some of the jQuery selectors. And we started that yesterday a little bit. And the jQuery documentation is pretty good about this. So if you go to jQuery and the API documentation, down the left-hand side, if we look for selectors, this is the page that comes up. And this is what you really need to start to understand, is how we can get at all of the elements on our page. Because if we can't get to them, we can't do anything with them. And the whole point is, with jQuery is to do something with the existing content on the page, right? So we're going to have to be able to select a child or select a sibling or find that particular link that we're going to change, things like that. Now, to tell you the truth, when I started with jQuery, I found it much simpler to add IDs everywhere in my page, because it's easy to look up an ID on a page. I don't have to know that it's the fourth sibling of the fifth paragraph of the class of this div, and I could write that in jQuery. But that to me became too constrictive and too fragile based on the HTML that I was writing, because I'm always changing the HTML. I might add another paragraph in there, and that would break my selector, because now it's the third paragraph instead of the second paragraph. So if I have a specific thing that I need to target with jQuery to turn on or off or add some comment or change a class, I add an ID to it. It just targets it right there. That ID has to be unique across the page, right? Or it doesn't work. IDs are meant for that purpose, and I can just go right to that page. So let's look at getting an ID here. So, for instance, let's see, am I on the right page? Yes. Say I want to look at here's some links, and I want to target one of these specific links. Now, there are selectors in jQuery that I could look at a UL of class nav that has the fifth LI. All right, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th. Let's look at the 7th LI. All right, so how would I do that in jQuery? Let's go and play with it in the console. And in the Chrome console here. So I want to get at that one link, which is the 7th link down. I want to look at this link right here. All right, that's the 7th UL, but no, that's not right. Because some of these are headers. So I want to look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, the 7th LI, which is the first link after the nav header. Right? Tough to find. So let's see if we can find that in our console. And remember that we start our jQueries with the $sign shortcut function, and we say I want to look for a UL that has a class of nav, right? The dot nav is the class, and then I need that will give me what? An array of jQuery objects or nodes. These are jQuery objects that I can manipulate. So I've got 2 that came back here. 2 of them have the nav class. One of them has nav, one of them has nav and the nav list. All right, so the other nav must have been up here somewhere. There's one, right? So I don't want that one. I want the second one here. So we need to target something else. Nav list, all right, so let's put that in there. I knew that. All right, so that got me the right nav, and inside of that there's a bunch of LIs, right? So now I need to target these LIs that are in there. So instead of that, let's target the LI, and that gives us an array of all the LIs that are inside of that, right? Everybody see that? Now I've got all of these LIs. See, these are all showing up in here. And that is an array. Now, I didn't check this. Let's see if this will actually work. That gives me the sixth, or this, actually that's the seventh. Why? Because we all start arrays at 0. So that is the array, the first link after the sidebar. What a pain to try to find that. Now, the problem is that's so specific that it's fragile if I change my HTML, right? And so I just come to the conclusion that these might be nice, and it's nice to be able to select all of this stuff, but I'm developing and changing that stuff all the time. It's just simpler to change the ID. So
change the LIs to LI 1, 2, 3.
right, I can have this as an ID, right? Let's make this the ID that I want, which is LI6. Okay, that's fine. So that's an ID. That's going to be unique. That's going to be the link right to it. So if I go and reload my page now, don't forget to reload it because I changed my HTML. I can now query for the ID, and we use the sharp symbol or the pound sign or the hash, whatever you want to call it, just like we do in CSS. This is a CSS selector. So I'm going to look for the ID of LI6. And bada boom, bada bing, I get that element right away, and I can then start doing something with it. So even though you have all of these selectors, I can look at parents and childs and the second sibling of the fourth ancestor cousin. These tend to be fragile. I just tend to not use them. That's real world. They're handy, but I tend to always go with this.
Well, they're handy after selector.
Yeah.
In point of like, okay, I have a button I'm writing a jQuery function that I want to run on all these buttons. And
Yeah.
I want to change something else. You select the button, run up to its parent, find the first sibling with
Yeah.
some characteristic to it, and change it.
Right.
That's where that comes in handy.
So I tend to, even if I have a button on here, I'm going to add an ID for that particular button so that I can add a function to it, and we'll be doing that later. So now that I have that, I will leave that to you to go through all of these selectors. They have the nth child, right? The nth last child, nth last type. I mean, just tons of them. Odd and even are pretty cool. If you have a table and I want to get every odd one of these and change them.
Really useful for highlighting rows.
Right. So we can use that. Let's show the odd bits because that's pretty cool. If I go back to my console and I say, give me all of the, what did I do before? There we go. So that gives me all of the LIs that are inside of here, right? And I only want the odd ones. It gives me a shorter list, and it gives me every other one. See that? It's hard to see in this case. So let's do something with them. Let's change the CSS. Once I select a group of something, I can change stuff, and I'll change the background color to gray. Huh? Oh, come on. Let's see. How about make it a medium gray there. All right, so I changed the background color of all of the odd links all the way down there. Isn't that sweet? So the odd is useful if you have a bunch of these things. That would be perfect for styling every other row in a table to be a light green like that or something like that, right? Whereas if you did that in the HTML itself, you'd have to alternate and add the class to every other row. You'd have to add a class for the green on each one of these. And it's not dynamic. If I add more data, then I'd have to change my HTML. That's the beauty of the jQuery. I can't always anticipate what's going to be spit out in my HTML because most of these are created by some back-end program. We're no longer building static websites. If this was all static, I wouldn't have to use jQuery at all. But they might have added more products, and that changes our rows, and we have to restyle them differently. So let's look at the code in here. Since I changed it programmatically, let's go look at this element. There you go. You can see that it actually added the background color as an inline style to the odd LIs. See that? Now, it did that automatically. It injected that into the HTML, and the browser saw that as new information and redisplayed it. It re-rendered that page because I changed the style on that.
Why didn't it write into the CSS?
Okay, that's a good question. Why didn't it? The CSS file is loaded once when you load the page, and if I change the CSS file, I'd have to reload the entire browser page to get that change back. Okay? If I change something in the HTML like this, the idea of CSS was that I could change things on the fly, but I cannot change the original file because it's already downloaded that and parsed it and gone through it, and then it throws it away. It doesn't use that anymore. The styles are embedded now in the document object model. So the only thing I can do is change that DOM by injecting some more HTML or changing styles. So I know it doesn't look right, that goes against your ingrained ideas of using inline styles, but we didn't write, that's not in our HTML. Our HTML didn't change, right? This is not, if I reload the page and don't run that, this is going to stay the same. So you can change that slightly if you have, if I had a class called background gray or something like that, I can change the class instead of calling this background color. So I can add a class to an element through jQuery. That's a little cleaner. I'm keeping then my styles in my style sheet, and I'm just applying a style at a time here. All right, does that make sense? Kind of? All right, I can change it once it's in the page, but I can't change a file that it's already loaded and parsed. It loaded that to create this dynamic document object model that has all the styles and everything associated with it. So I can change those in the DOM, but I can't change them in the original file. All right? All right, isn't that cool? I think that's so sweet. So the selectors, again, if I'm looking for a button, I'm going to give it a style, an ID that I can target right away. So let's say I want one of these.
There's a button up there.
Do I have a button anywhere?
Yeah, right there.
All right, so this is a type button. Notice it doesn't have a form around it. And you guys are used to having to have a form tag that posts somewhere or something. But we can do this differently in jQuery. We can attach functions to our buttons directly, which you guys are getting to in JavaScript right now, called anonymous functions.
Yeah.
Right? You guys are...
Well, we're not allowed to use buttons.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you will when you get... Yeah, you can do it to a link, whatever. I can add an anonymous function to anything. All right? So I can look at this button. It's easier then if I change this and I say this is my... give this an ID of what does this button do? Oh, that's
It's
it.
the little box. It's the nav.
Oh, that's this one? Oh, I don't want to mess with that. Let's not
Yeah,
mess
don't
with
mess
that.
with it.
No, that'll break it.
That'll-
Let's add a button.
You have a button on there.
Where's my button? I lost my
Learn
button.
more.
Hello world. That's inside of my hero unit. That's this one.
Yeah,
Learn more.
right there.
All right, so this is an A tag that's been given a style of button, and that was provided by the Twitter Bootstrap. So I'm going to give this an ID of something like learn more. All right. So in my jQuery, let's reload this. I can go right to that button, given the ID of learn more, and I get right at that tag. I can do stuff with that. So, for instance, I can call some of the other methods on it, like hide. I want to hide that button. It goes away. The browser, because I'm changing the DOM, I'm telling it that that is no longer there anymore. It does a display none on the element. Right, so let's go look at, that's a good question. You can see the style that it changed here. This idea, learn more, it added a style of display none. So that's all it did. Yes, it still could potentially take up the space. No, it's not remove elements, right? So I can show it back again. And that puts the element back in again. And if I go back and look at the style, you see that it removed that, or actually changed it to an inline block here. So it's possibly, yeah. Right, right.
But if you want to change that default style display, you can call it in jQuery.
Yeah, right. I can change anything I want in the styles on this piece of information here.
Can't you grab it by the text on there?
By the learn more?
Yeah.
Yes. Through the selectors, I can find an element that has a text property of learn more. That is possible.
Is there a reason why you would not do that?
Because it ties it, it doesn't let me change this later on. In the world of working with clients, they say, I don't want it to say learn more, I want it to say learn less, okay? And you've already got your whole thing in here. Now you've got to change the jQuery, the selector for searching for learn less. I've got to change the text itself. And the ID, the user never sees the ID. You're showing this to the president. They don't care the background, what ID it has. And that's not going to change. I could change my text without changing my program. That's one reason. Yeah, it's fragile. That's why I just like IDs. I can create 1,000 IDs on here, and it just makes it really easy.
Sounds easier just to use an ID.
It does,
Way
and
easier
I do.
than trying to climb up and down the
Right,
DOM.
exactly.
You end up with UL.
There are some reasons that you need that, like Adam said, but
Well, if you're using dynamic content, if you're loading dynamic content, and all that dynamic content has a button,
yeah,
and it needs to dynamically change depending upon which button you push,
yeah.
you have to be able to traverse the DOM for each individual button dynamically.
Yep. So, but still, even still, what I do is if I'm outputting a bunch of stuff in a table, for instance, and I know that I'm going to be changing this row and a column on certain events, I'm going to add that ID in the background programming language that I'm in. So if I'm in PHP, I know I'm going to add this ID of sharp row and then a variable name, and I can increment that variable name, and when it spits it out to HTML, it'll be row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So I always have that available to me. And there's so much more we can do with data elements and stuff that we'll get to later. All right. So isn't that cool? that's very cool stuff. So I can show and hide my little guy there. While we're in this, I wanted to show you some more, if I can find them again. The properties, that's, if I'm looking at the elements, which is, this is the DOM. This is basically the DOM of my document. I can look at some other information like this metrics. This is pretty cool in the Chrome tools. If I'm inspecting this element, and I come down and look at the metrics, I can see how much padding that particular element has. It tells me how wide it is. It's 106 by 20. It has an 18 padding on left and right. Actually, 19. You got to be able to read. And then 11 on the top and bottom. It's got a border of 1 all the way around. It's got a margin of nothing all the way around.
Can you manipulate those metrics?
Sure. Yep.
That would have been useful in the last design.
Yeah. See? I don't think you can do it right here. Maybe you can. Ah, that's sweet. So yeah, that's the only way to go. And then, of course, that doesn't save it. I have to remember and go change my HTML or my CSS for this in this case. So, make a big button. So, make them a big button. You can also look at all the properties associated with this element, and this will become more and more useful as we start adding events. So as I add an event listener, an anonymous function to this button, I can see that here, and I can actually look at the code and find out where that's at. These are built in, so there's nothing there yet because it's an A tag. This is actually an A tag. Remember that. It's not really a button. It's an A tag that looks like a button. Ooh, it's magic stuff. All right, so there's just some really cool stuff that this has. It almost invalidates Firebug for me. You know, I'm so used to Firebug, though, it's hard for me to switch.
Firebug still does a few more things.
Yeah, it does. And over here, I can change stuff. Like I can change this to I can change it to display none, which is what my jQuery did. Same thing. Display block, which is slightly different than an inline block, slightly different than a block. Yeah, I can turn these on and off too. It jumps to where it was created. So I can turn the padding on and off, things like that. All right, so that's some more console stuff. But so I can select anything I want on the page, and that's the beginning of jQuery, is being able to select stuff. So once we can find it, we can operate on those things by calling all kinds of functions, and there's effects that we can play with that are fun. We can attach events to these, which we'll be doing. We can manipulate things, insert stuff, change text. So let's say, for instance, I want to change that button's text. So I have my button. Let's store my button in a variable. Let's go get the button, and it's going to be learn more. So now A references my button here, right? So I can say a.hide, a.show. Oops. A.show has to be a method, right? You guys know the difference now in your JavaScript side? The a.show, I can actually assign that to a variable. That's the function definition of what the show does. So I can actually see the code for that. but to actually call it, I need the parentheses. So I can say a.text. Let's look at the text of this element. And it happens to have learn more with the two greater than signs here. Actually, that's a Reikowo, or whatever they call that. Yeah, it's not quite. It's a ampersand RAQUO, something like that. So anyway, I can change the text. That is, in programming parlance, is this a getter or a setter? In this case, though, it's a what? It's a getter. It gets the value of what the text is of my A element, which is referencing this button. So if I want a setter, it uses the same value, text, but instead of nothing in my parentheses, I change it to ask Dave. All right? So I can change the text on here dynamically inside my program. So one thing that might be useful for that is after they click this, I might change the text to say loading or disable it or do something. I can do all kinds of stuff, right? Learn less, right? I could change it. I can disable the button so that it no longer clicks on it. Oh, that's what? Disable? You kidding? Did I spell it wrong? Well, see, jQuery changes all the time, so that could be something that has been deprecated. Disable.
You could change the cursor so it looks disabled.
Yeah.
Fakes people out.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. That's confusing me. I keep going to the wrong one. A.enabled. No. Shoot.
What if it's because it's an A tag?
No, A is just an object. But yeah, it's possible. Yeah, it doesn't. No.
So just disable without the D. Huh.
No, I think you have to actually call it.
I'm off on a tangent here.
You actually have to call it like you would normally in JavaScript.
Yeah. There's a way.
I wonder if it's conflicting with bootstraps.
Go back up to the top, because there was something up there about disable. Disable callback.
Yeah. Yeah. And magically, I know how to do this now.
Do you need a dollar sign?
So now it's disabled. See how it changed the color? I can't click on it. The mouse doesn't change. So I'm changing the attribute of a link. So let's. Nope.
Still the same.
Because I called it enameled.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Or just blank. An empty string.
Go back to your reference. I think you have to do add attribute.
Remove attribute disabled.
That's not it.
Go back to your where you found that attribute.
Then I'm going to expose what I did here. So
Helpful
I
direction.
went and I Googled it,
To enable.
and we want to remove the attribute. See? We want to remove the attribute. Why didn't you listen to me the first time? So we're going to say a dot remove attribute of disabled. Disabled. There we go, and now we're back. Isn't that cool? So we've gotten a little farther into jQuery. I leave the selectors to you. In the real world, I use IDs all the time, so I have no problem with you doing that. And we'll start with looking at some functions and events and animations and all kinds of stuff next week. So that's fun stuff. That's it. Go away. So then